Bruins Beat is brought to you by PrizePicks and the GameTime app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play, just $5. And we're presented by GameTime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Joe Haggerty. Haggs, what is up?
What's up? How you doing, Evan?
I am great. We're recording this Friday afternoon, which means you and I are going to spend the next 2 days probably in a hockey rink.
I'll be there the next couple hours. I'll be at McVan, whatever the hell it's called in Peabody, the rink at Peabody.
That's great. I'll be at Lovell all day Saturday.
Oh, beautiful.
Which is a good rink. I mean,
yeah.
People who don't know, they have great food.
They got a bowling alley, for God's sake.
They have a bowling alley. They have a golf simulator.
Yes, they got 2 golf simulators.
Oh, I didn't know they had 2.
They've got 2.
They got 2. That's all that matters.
That's it.
Tremendous facility. Obviously, a lot we can discuss with the Bruins. Training camp is next week. We'll get into some of the rookies in a bit. But I found this comment interesting, and you're kind of the perfect person to talk to on this because you covered Bruce Cassidy extensively for all of his years here.
Yep.
But Jonathan Marchessault was on the Cam and Strick podcast a couple days ago, and he was asked about Cassidy. Now, obviously, Marchessault won a cup with Cassidy, now just signed with the Nashville Predators. So they figured, all right, this is the best time to ask him about the lightning rod that can be Bruce Cassidy. And Jonathan Marchessault said, quote, "There are guys that didn't like him too. He says it openly. I couldn't care less if you like me or not. At first, me and him would motherfuck a couple times in a year, yelling like, fuck you, and you're not right." He would tell me that I can endure it, and that's why we would go at it. He would use it to fuel the team. The team said that when he did stuff like that, we always responded well. He will always have my respect because I won with the guy. So I believe the way he runs things, he ran it the right way because we won. What do you want to say after a season? We had our meetings with our GM after the season. We won. And what do you want to say? We won. You can't say anything.
Right.
So interesting comments from him on Cassidy. And I think we'll dive
I didn't realize Marchessault was have the attitude that he does. He's got a little a-hole for sure, which is great. I love it.
It must have been great for the other guys on the team when Marchessault and Cassidy would start screaming at each other like a couple times a year. It's like that couple that that they've been together forever, but every now and again they get in like an explosive, toxic fight, and you're like, how do they stay together? But they make it work. It's not my cup of tea. But some can do it. With this though, I think this sparks a lot of questions. Obviously Bruce Cassidy did 5 years here, won a lot in the regular season, got within a game of winning the Stanley Cup. Obviously, when he got fired, everybody kind of went, what's the deal here? As the months went on, we sort of learned more and more that guys were sick of him. And the question to you is do you think the Bruins had more to win with Bruce Cassidy than they did in those 5 years?
No, because the time to win was 2019 and they couldn't do it. That was that. If they were going to win, that was when they were going to win. Take care of business in that game and secure the legacies of Bergeron, Chara, all those guys with the second cup, Marchand. That was, if it was going to happen for Bruce Cassidy and the Bruins, that would have been the time. And they came up short. And, but it's like equal parts, you know what I mean? It's certainly not all on Bruce Cassidy. And I don't think anybody's ever said that. Certainly, I don't think the Bruins feel that way. But it's, it wasn't all on the players either. Bruce Cassidy went with, what's his name, instead of David Backes in Game 7. I can't remember the kid's name anymore.
Carson Kuhlman.
Thank you. Carson Kuhlman. Scrappy-do Carson Kuhlman went with him in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals instead of a guy that was an all-star player, a veteran guy that never won a cup. And you were probably going to get every last bit of everything he had in that game. In a one-game situation. And he hadn't played for a couple of games, too, so his tank was probably full.
Against his former team.
At that point, yes. And that's one of those ones where it's all right, dude, that's not that I don't think you made the right decision there. So I think there's a little bit of both things going on, but you can't I just don't think the Bruins were built necessarily to, be Stanley Cup winners under Bruce Cassidy with the teams that they had. Like, they were good regular season teams, and they had a chance to win when, like, the Red Sea parted and, like, everybody, all the top one seeds went out in the first round. And, like, they were able to march through everybody and get to a St. Louis team they were favored over that, like, nobody really thought they were going to win. And they had, the course reversed where St. Louis played like Vancouver. St. Louis played like the Bruins did in 2011, and the Bruins played like Vancouver did in 2011 in that series. It was like the roles were reversed, and they lost. And, I think it was about the personnel much more than it was about Bruce Cassidy during his stint there. But I also think, just from what Marchessault is saying and what from other people that I've talked to have said and what you heard as things were going down, and I even heard rumblings. I had people asking me that last year under Bruce Cassidy if I thought, and I didn't see it every day, but I had people asking me, don't you think the players are getting tired of it? Don't you feel like there's like a mutiny coming or something? Like, I literally had people asking me that, not people around Boston, but people in other spots around the NHL who were tapped in and people were talking from within the Bruins room, talking to them, that there was a lot of
when Cassidy was here still.
Yes, there was a lot of unrest and unhappiness, and I had people like sort of presenting that to me, and I was like, I've definitely heard some people aren't happy here, and obviously, Jake DeBrusk had voiced publicly that he wasn't happy and wanted to get traded, but I didn't realize until after he wasn't brought back how deep seated it was. And that I think they really had enough at that point. And I just think his style and him being that way that he is, there's an expiration date on that as a coach. Like, you can only do that for so long before it wears thin and the players are like, F you, I'm not playing for you anymore. And, they've had enough and they kind of check out, especially if you're like tweaking guys to motivate the rest of the team. Like, if you've got whipping boys that you're like going after to get everybody else fired up, like, there's only so many times you can do that before everybody's just like, what's this guy's deal? Like,
I completely agree. And I think the only times that a coach like that can last a long time, I think those days might be over. I mean, you think about like Scotty Bowman with the Canadians when they're winning all the time. It's like, well, the guy keeps winning Stanley Cups. Like, we can't let him go. I mean, even if you guys still play for him.
I mean, let's say if Butch wins another cup with Vegas, like, he might start entering that territory where it'd be hard to get rid of him. But even then, in this day and age, to your point, I think that still is you're risking danger if you like continually coach that way.
Yeah, and I think you see it less and less. I mean, you see a lot of the new school coaches coming up have a completely different mindset. And you see with the Patriots right now. I know it's football, but Gerard Mayo, being friendly with the players and motivating them through, encouragement. And I think it's an interesting thing. And that's a big reason, I think, why they brought Montgomery in, was sort of to be that, players coach, friendly guy, demeanor. And I think a lot of, you see a lot of fans say, oh, if they just kept Bruce Cassidy, if they just listened to Bruce Cassidy and let Jake DeBrusk go or so-and-so go. And there might be some truth to it for sure. But I agree with you. I also think that it ran its course. And I think when you coach like that, you do only get a couple shots. They had their big one in 2019. They just missed. And I think that sort of plays into it, where it's like, was Krejci coming back if Bruce Cassidy coached again in 22-23? Probably not, so I think there's a lot of things. And you can argue with me that, hey, they didn't even win a cup anyway. So, like, doesn't matter. But I still think, I think, as you said, it ran thin with Cassidy here. And I think he's a winner. He's a winning coach. He's proved that here and in Vegas. Doesn't mean he's a bad coach. I just think he is one of those guys who, comes in to shake things up. But I don't know if the shelf life is very long with guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's got a certain style, right? That's the way he's going to coach. And then Marchessault sort of alluded to that. And like, that's who he is. And he's like, I'm not going to be your friend. Like, I don't care if you like me. Like, I'm just going to come in and do my thing. And I think he's got enough confidence that he's done that over the years and had success that like he's firmly entrenched in that, and that's
and it works.
Yeah. And that's just his style. Like, he's not trying to be a hard ass. He's not trying to do anything. Like, he's got his way of doing things and his style that he's brought in, and they have to sort of get used to that. But I do think there's a time where it just doesn't ring as clearly as it does when, especially if you're in need of that kind of voice, that kind of demeanor, that kind of coaching style. Like there are some teams that need that kick in the ass. And then, maybe they have success, but then like it runs a cycle where you need the kick in the ass, you have success, you get to a certain point. Let's say you win a cup like that. Then a few years after you've won, you're like, all right, I'm tired of getting a kick in the ass. I don't need that anymore. Like I'm good. Like kind of like Marchessault was saying, like, what are they going to say to us in the meetings after we won? You can't say anything. Like you start to get to that attitude after you won a cup. Like you don't need to hear it anymore. And you don't need that voice and that kick anymore. And like, why am I listening to you? And maybe that happened to a degree in Boston with some of those players too, where like they had won previously, so they didn't feel like they needed that anymore. When some of the players probably did need that, and that's part of the sort of back and forth with like the Cassidy style and the Jim Montgomery style. Like, have the Bruins been benefited in the playoffs the last couple of years from having a players coach that never a disparaging word is really said about the players, and everything's in house, and he's not really as critical, and like he did challenge them more last year for sure. Once Bergeron and Krejci had retired, and it was a little bit of a different tone from Jim Montgomery and a little bit more of a taskmaster. But like, he's not going to completely change his style. I think he's always going to be a player's coach to a large degree, and that's who he is. And to his credit, I think he's just a guy that enjoys being a coach, enjoys being with the players, like wants to keep it sort of light and keep it fun and keep the guys engaged, and like has a positive outlook and spin on everything. He's just one of those guys that's very optimistic. But does that, do players take advantage of that after a while? Does that also wear thin? And is that something that at a certain point, it's just not effective anymore? And you need to go back to somebody that's a little bit more of a hard driving like coach. I will say this. I think it's really hard for a coach to try to be something they're not. Like if you're a player's coach and you feel like they need a hard ass, I think it's really difficult to just flip the dial 180 degrees and all of a sudden try to become that guy. I think that can be really hard, and vice versa too. It's probably really hard if you're Bruce Cassidy, if you tried to become a player's coach that was all like soft and lovey-dovey. I don't think that would work either. But like, I heard certain things like about Cassidy. Great guy, great coach, very effective, extremely smart and cerebral, like super smart. Like really understands hockey systems, like how to diagnose things, how to fix things, like all that stuff. His practices were excellent, but I did hear things about him and the way he treated veteran players that turned players off. Like he would do certain things, and you're like, why did he do that to him? And he felt like it really didn't ring true with a lot of those guys, and he started losing them when he was taking like highly respected veterans and kind of dressing them down. So, you kind of have to pick your spots with that stuff. And I think for Bruce, I would guess it was a learning experience for him where he used what he learned in Boston, that what worked, what didn't work, and he went to Vegas and he fine-tuned it even more and turned it into them becoming Stanley Cup champs. Like, I think he's learned from every stop that he's had, good, bad, or indifferent, and he's learned from like the positives and the negatives from those experiences. And he certainly did it when he was in Washington as one of the youngest coaches in the history of the NHL, and then went back to the AHL for a long time, and he used all that stuff when he went to Boston. And I think he used certain things with the Bruins when he got to Vegas to really help fine-tune what he was doing there, and realize he's got to pick his spots and pick who he's doing it with too. Like certain players, I think you can, like Marchessault said, I can take it. Certain players can take that treatment and that sort of abuse to a degree, and other players you can't, and you shouldn't go there at all. And as a coach, definitely part of your job to know which guys you can do that with and which guys you can't.
Well, I found it interesting reading about when he first took that Vegas job, meeting with Jack Eichel in the Cape, yep, and working with him. And I found that interesting. And I think, the thing with Cassidy was always, he presents himself as a really friendly guy to the media, to fans. He's very good on camera.
Yep.
We've talked about this before at length. Like, and I think it kind of takes people by surprise when it's like, oh, he's like a hard ass. Like you almost, they don't usually, with the hard asses or the hard asses with the media too. It just runs between, but he's very good at flipping it on and off. So clearly it worked.
I remember doing a podcast, Evan. This is back when I was NBC Sports Boston, and I was doing a podcast.
I was born.
Pretty much. Like you were in diapers at this point.
Yeah, it was.
It's back when I was NBC Sports boss. I believe this was a great American hockey show podcast that I did for a while. I'm sure there is no evidence of it on the web anywhere anymore. Like when we changed platforms, pretty much everything I did for NBC Sports Boston freaking disappeared.
That's ridiculous.
It's crazy. No, it's just the online phenomenon. When you write for an online entity, if they like change platforms and don't archive, it's freaking gone. Like you'll never see it.
Yeah, that's right. I know that happened to EEI.
Yeah, it happens everywhere. Because they don't care, right? Like when they're changing platforms, they just want all the bells and whistles. They don't care about actually saving stuff that was on their site like 5 or 6 years ago that everybody like thought was a great story. But anyway, so it was a Great American Hockey Show podcast, and I remember I'll never forget. I had Colby Cohen on. You know him, played at BU. Now he does college hockey, color commentary, does like the Frozen Four, does a ton of stuff like that. Great guy, great media guy. Like him a lot. And he played in the Bruins system. So he played in Providence for Bruce Cassidy. And this was back when Claude was still the coach. And I remembered asking him if he thought Bruce Cassidy was ever going to be an NHL coach. I asked him the question. And you could tell Colby Cohen and Bruce Cassidy did not like each other by his answer when he was like, yeah, no, he'll never coach in the NHL. Like Colby Cohen just like trashed him, like hammered him. And it was clear that he had some axes to grind, and he had some like, there was something personal there. I felt like where he probably, chose him as one of the guys that he went after when he was playing for him.
Yeah.
But like you get sodium pentothal and some of the players that have played for Bruce Cassidy, and all of a sudden stuff will start coming out of them where you're like, okay, he must say some stuff when like during practice and in the room that they just do not like. He's not afraid to go there.
Well, I remember during that 2019 playoff run, I think it was Bates Petraglia went on Spit and Chicklets and like ripped Cassidy.
Yeah,
Washington.
Yep.
People like around here were like, "What? And it was like, no, like there was that history. So that's interesting. I can't imagine Colby and Butch would get along great, just in terms, like, they're both, Colby's very, speaks his mind, outspoken guy. And I can imagine those two probably clashed quite a bit.
He was definitely mind about Cassidy that day. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I would love to hear the audio of that. Honestly, I would. I think it'd be hilarious. Anyways, I want to get into some more Bruins stuff, current day Bruins stuff. But first, quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your picks are still live. Big questions going into the football season. Will Patrick Mahomes throw for more or less than 267.5 yards one week? Will Jalen Hurts throw for 240.5 passing yards another? Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Now, back to the show. So rookie camp was this past week. The Bruins are obviously up in Buffalo now for the Prospects Challenge. Training camp begins this coming week. In terms of rookies, we've talked a lot about guys like Fabian Lysell, Georgi Merkulov, and we'll talk a lot more about them in coming days. Were there any rookie camp guys on that roster that you think that you're kind of watching this year with a little bit of intrigue?
I have the roster right in front of me right here.
I love it. There we go.
Anybody who I think is going to play this year, like if
Not
there's
play, but I mean, you're intrigued by, you're curious to watch their development throughout the
course. I mean, and I watched the game. I watched the Friday game at noon against the Penguins. I think Farinacci, Riley Duran definitely. Brett Harrison, I thought, played really well in this game. So maybe potentially him too. I was not impressed with the defenseman. Have not been impressed with the defenseman. I do not like Frederic Brunet really that much. I don't think I've when I've watched him in development camp, I've seen him make a lot of mistakes, and I haven't seen like the offensive defenseman skill level that everybody sort of talks about him having. I just haven't seen enough of it, and he makes a lot of defensive mistakes and a lot of mistakes with the puck. Ryan Mast, I really have never seen it with him either. He's a big body, but I have not seen him really, in that game today, it felt like Brunet and Mast were a pairing, and it felt like they were in their zone like 70% of the time when they were out there. And this is against these are guys that have logged AHL time now. They should be like dominant players. Like Farinacci was a dominant player today. Riley Duran was a dominant player today. I thought Brett Harrison was extremely good too. Like those guys should flash and should shine in this kind of a setting against their peers and against younger players, and they did. I don't feel like you saw that from any of the defensemen. And that's fine because the Bruins are stacked at defense at the NHL level anyway. So I don't know that they're necessarily going to need a ton of reinforcements from the AHL. But as far as the rookie camp guys go, I think Farinacci and Duran and Harrison probably stood out the most for me. And will probably be guys, especially Duran and Farinacci, that I feel like if there's injuries up front, we'll see some of those guys. Now, all this should also include the fact that Fabian Lysell and Georgi Markelov were not at the rookie camp. They're not in the prospect showcase, and they will start in regular NHL camp like everybody else. So they weren't there to kind of dominate this weekend and get a jump start on competing for jobs when real training camp starts in the middle of next week. And you can go either way with the Bruins on that one. You can be critical of them not having Lysell and Merkelov play. Maybe that would have been best for them. I mean, after all, I think Patra, Lowry, and Beecher all played in the rookie camp in the prospect showcase last year, and they were able to springboard that into great camps and then winning NHL jobs. So that's one way to do it. But, for whatever reason, they didn't want them to get dinged up. They wanted them at, full tank of gas to start camp next week, like whatever. They're not going to show up until, Wednesday, Thursday next week. But I still think Lysell, I think the Bruins want him to win that second line right wing spot with Charlie Coyle and Brad Marchand. I think they're trying to put him in the best position to succeed that they think they can do it. And it'll be interesting to watch him because I think that's the guy more than anybody else that I want to watch and see what he's got. Given a great situation and given a great opportunity, is he going to be able to seize it, show the explosive speed, show the skill level, show an ability to play a little bit more of a two-way game, which he's going to have to play if he's playing in a top six role with Marchand and Coyle and going against other teams, really good players. Like he's going to have to be good all around, not just good offensively. But I'd like to at least start with seeing him showing some explosive, dynamic offensive stuff to sort of announce his presence with authority, Cartman style. Evan, I'd really like to see that from Fabian Lysell.
That would be good. You're talking Eric Cartman, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to make sure I caught that correctly.
Yes. What are you talking about, Evan?
Well, that's the thing. I was like, is there an older reference? Because I don't know if you ever saw, but there was an episode that Diver made a Godfather reference, and I kind of just laughed at it. And then people called me out in the comments being like, there's no way he got that reference. And they're right. I've actually never seen the Godfather. So now when people make references, I've never seen The Godfather. I still have not. So it's funny because my dad loves it, and he would always watch it growing up, but I would always walk in the room like halfway through, and I'd be like, I can't. This is a movie I want to see from the start to finish. I don't want to see parts of. I want to see the whole thing.
That is part of the reason you haven't watched it, because you feel like you've watched it, even though you haven't, because your dad loved it. You feel like you know things about it, right? Because your dad loved the movies or whatever, has talked about them before. Finn is like that with Star Wars. Like he has no desire to see Star Wars. Like, probably feels like he's seen it a zillion times already because I've like watched it, and he's seen it. Me watching bits and pieces of it and stuff like that.
Of course. In terms of rookies, though, I mean, I agree with you on Lysell, and I think he's the guy that seems like the road is open for him to take that second line right wing spot. This is sort of his time to grab it. I think Patra should be at Prospects Challenge, given the injury he had last year. I'd like to see him get some game action before preseason starts.
Yeah,
I get why they're holding him out, just in terms he did have a lot of NHL time last year. And I also understand he's coming off of his injuries and his surgeries, but I would have liked to have seen him at the Prospects Challenge. I think that would have done him well. And in terms of Riley Duran, Woburn guy, Lawrence Academy guy, I think he's a guy that I don't think he makes the team out of camp. I just think that they're kind of set in the bottom six. But I do think that when injuries hit throughout the year, I think he's going to be a guy that you see.
Yeah, definitely.
Up in Boston.
I think Farinacci too. I think Farinacci looks very good. Like, I thought he looked great today. Like, he really stood out to me along with Duran.
I didn't get a chance to watch today's game. So,
yeah. But I think they also sort of explained that, like, Farinacci was great the first half of last year. He was like the leading scorer on the team, and then he kind of fell off the table in the second half. And Ryan Muginel was kind of explaining that, like, that is very common for guys coming from the NCAA, where they play like 30 games and only play on the weekends, and all of a sudden to go to the AHL grind where you're playing like 70 plus games, it becomes a much different animal, and you tend to like wear out in the second half of the year if you're coming from college. So I think we're going to see a lot even more from Farinacci than we did last year. And just judging by the way he played today, like, he stood out to me. Some of the plays he made, highly skilled, very smart plays. Like, he looked to some degree like an NHL player. He scored a goal today too. Yeah, but I think he's a guy that we're going to see at some points this year for sure.
Yeah, I think they do have those guys, Duran, Farinacci, who can kind of fit in that bottom six. Then you hope Fabian Lysell can sort of fit into that top six. I want to get to Jeremy Swayman because that seems like that's the topic that everybody's wondering about, talking about. But first, quick word from our friends over at GameTime. Fall is beginning, which means football is back. And nothing beats a college football atmosphere. With both college and NFL games, who doesn't love a good tailgate? Get to the game with GameTime. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This fall, my friends and I are going to the Patriots-Titans game in Tennessee. How will we get tickets for the game? GameTime, of course. The super deal has been amazing to us in the past, and there's no doubt it will be great to us again. I just love the curated deals, which make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Some other features I love are the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. GameTime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, and theater. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, back to the show. So Jeremy Swayman, Haggs, we've been talking about him and his contract situation since feels like forever.
Yeah,
feels like we have been discussing this forever. It rolls on. Camp is, they get on the ice Thursday. It starts Wednesday.
Yep.
So there is time for it to still happen before camp, technically. Where are you at with this stuff? The latest reports. What's your opinion on all of this?
My opinion is he's probably going to miss some time. He's not going to be signed to the start of camp. It's probably going to go in a couple days. I continue to think he's not going to get 8 years. He's not going to get like a maximum money deal. Like, he's not going to get what he's looking for. Like, I've said this numerous times on the Pucks with Haggs podcast, and I will now say it on the Bruins Beat podcast, that Jeremy Swayman, and the talk you hear is that he's looking for Charlie McAvoy money, that he wants $9.5 million. It is nonsensical to me that a goalie is saying, I want number one defenseman money. I want defenseman money on any level. They're not comparables. Comparing one position to the other is not the way contract negotiations and contract discussions go. But the reason he's saying I want the McAvoy deal is because there is no goalie where he can say it's a comparable to him and not sound outlandish. Like if he says I want the Vasilevsky deal, people will laugh at him because like he is on no footing whatsoever to get paid like Andrei Vasilevsky. Like he's nowhere close to getting that kind of a contract. All the guys that are making the huge money deals, goalies, they'd already been number ones for like some time, and they'd already won Vezina trophies too. Like they'd already been a number one goalie, and they'd already proven that they were the best goalie in the league, at least in a single season, before they got paid like that. Jeremy Swayman has never played more than 44 games in a year. He had a very good month in the playoffs. He was an all-star, and he got named to the all-star game last year. Like last year was a bit of a breakout year for him. He's never done it without Linus Ullmark, a Vezina Trophy winner, basically by his side. He has never been a number one guy where it's all on his shoulders. He has never had to deal with that kind of physical and mental grind. He has never proven that he can do it and maintain consistency. Like I believe in Jeremy Swayman. I think he's a number one guy. I think he's going to be the man in Boston between the pipes for the next 10 plus years. I think he's special. I've thought that since the first time I saw him in NHL training camp with the Bruins, the first time I saw him in development camp for that matter. Like he just stood out. And for me to notice a goalie like that during those kind of camps, that says something because usually you really don't notice those guys that much. They all sort of blur together. But you notice his technique, his athleticism, just the way he did things. So I believe in him, and I think he's going to be a tremendous goalie for a long time. And he will get that money at some point in the future. But I feel like it's going to go on for a little bit. I feel like there's going to be a bit of a holdout or he's not signed. And then I think they're going to end up doing some kind of a bridge contract because that's what they're going to have to do. And it's probably going to be the most that anybody's ever gotten in his position. Like Saros was in his spot a few years back, not when he signed his recent deal where he's $7 million on a huge money contract. But the contract he signed before that, he was pretty much in the same exact spot that Swayman's in now, and he got 3 years and $15 million. Maybe that becomes 3 years and $21 million or something like that, or 4 years and $28 million. But I think it's going to be a bridge contract where he gets really good money, more than what the Spit and Chicklets were talking about with the 4 years, 6.2 or whatever. But I understand what the Bruins are thinking there, and I think eventually Swayman's camp is going to have to come to that thinking too, where they're probably going to have some kind of a shorter term contract where he's still getting paid good money. And then he can really hit it, when he's 28, 29 years old, after he's like done really well and proven that he's number one guy over the next 3-4 years, whatever that he signs his contract for. But it's just unfortunate timing. Like he's not ready to be signed to that 8-year deal. He hasn't proven it enough. And the Bruins would be foolish to give that to him. And I don't think they will because it would
$9.5 million per year too. That's the other part.
Like it's, again, Evan, you hear them saying he wants the McAvoy deal because there is no comparable goalie he could compare himself to say, I want that deal without seeming outlandish, without seeming crazy, without seeming like he's asking for way more than he's earned to this point. And I say that as a guy that's been really good and has done everything the Bruins have asked and deserves like good money. But like whatever he's asking for, if it's the McAvoy deal, like stop asking for defenseman money. Like it sounds like to people that know hockey and know negotiations, it sounds ridiculous if you're a goalie and you say, I want the McAvoy contract. Like you don't play defense. Like you're not a comparable to a defenseman. Like tell me what goalie you want to get paid like, and then you can actually start a real like conversation. If you're saying that, it just sounds like Fantasyland.
Maybe he's talking about the McAvoy deal he signed a couple of years back, the 3-year deal. Remember that? As like 3 years, like $14 million, I think.
Yeah, that's not
maybe that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe that's. I agree. So this is the thing, right? And this is why I think I've come off the 8-year deal too, because the more you hear, the more I think it is a 3 or 4 year deal because he has top 5 potential. Like no doubt. I think he is a phenomenal goaltender, and I think he's going to be phenomenal.
Yep.
But the track record is not there yet. It just isn't. To hand him $9.5 million or to hand him 10. I was fine with 8x8 throughout the offseason.
Nope.
Solely, and I know you disagree with me on this.
Yep.
The biggest reason is that was like the max of I'll take the bet on this for 8 years. Now I look at this and, given what reportedly his camp is looking for, you go above 8, that's when it starts to be like, all right, like even 8 is a gamble, but more than that is crazy. And that's the problem. And I think that's why, as you said, it will be a 3 or 4 year deal where he gets, 7 million, 7.25 million, because, and that it, by the way, like if we were to do like what he's worth, just based off what he's given,
that's what
somewhere
he should get.
in the 6-7 range. Like that's what he is worth.
Yes.
And you give him a little bit more to satisfy that and to try to ease things over. So when you go back to the negotiating table in 3 years, that, both sides are good. You're not going to lose him.
No, and he'll get his money the next time around. Like if he truly is as good as he thinks he is, and we all think he is, that he's going to get even more money like 3-4 years down the road when the cap goes up, as it continues to go up. And maybe at that point he gets to set the standard for like goalies and how much they get paid. If he like gets a Vezina trophy over the next few years, wins the Stanley Cup, like does all the things he wants to do and believes he's capable of doing, then do it. Bet on yourself with this contract, do it, and then you'll get that huge deal when you're like, 25, 28, 29, 30 years old. And goalies can play a long time. So you could sign a 7 or 8 year deal at that age and be perfectly fine. And I'm sure the Bruins would show him that kind of money if he was that kind of goalie, 3 or 4 years from now.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think that's where they end up. I think they end up in that 3 to 4 year range for a Swayman contract. But we'll see when it happens. Anytime I'm away from my phone for more than like 20 minutes, I'm like, I'm going to pull my phone out and it will have broken 20 minutes ago and I'll be behind, what everyone else is saying. But Haggs, what can the people look forward to from you?
Lots of hockey reporting and good hockey talk over the next foreseeable future, Evan. I will be at rinks from here to Timbuktu over the next like 5, 6, 7 months. And I will be writing at Boston Sports Journal 3 times a week. I will be on my Substack, joehaggerty.substack.com, and Pucks with Haggs podcast, all of the above. You can hear, see, and read all of the good hockey stuff for the foreseeable future. So it's fun. We're right on the like sort of edge of the cliff and going over it right now with the hockey.
Fall right off.
We're about to see our loved ones and not see them for a while.
Yeah, exactly. You're 100% right. Well, Haggs, appreciate it as always. We will go enjoy our fun weekends in the rinks. That is Joe Haggerty. I'm Evan Marinofsky, Bruins Beat listeners. Have a great rest of your week.